If you've ever started the year motivated, only to watch your resolution quietly dissolve by February, this episode is for you. Because it's not a discipline problem, it's an identity one. Welcome to the first episode of The Vital Cast. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice I'm keeping this simple. Just me, a mic, and an idea I believe can fundamentally change how you approach growth this year. If you prefer reading, this episode is based on this week's newsletter, and you'll find the written version linked below. So let's begin. New Year's resolutions are culturally fascinating. There's something deeply human about the fresh start energy, the belief that January 1st can mark a clean break between who I was and who I'm becoming. But here's what I've seen personally and with the leaders that I coach. Most resolutions fail, not because people lack willpower, but because they're trying to change behavior without changing the identity that that behavior is anchored to. There's a quote attributed to author James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. He said, "Improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are." You don't read a book, you become a reader. You don't run a race, you become a runner. Every action is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. I've heard this idea from many teachers over the years, and I understood it intellectually, but it didn't land in my body until much later. And I want to name the moment it finally clicked. A few years ago, I read Parallel Universes of Self by Frederick Dodson. And in that book, he describes a model that stopped me in my tracks. A simple pyramid that explains how reality is actually created. At the root of your reality, behind every decision, every habit, every action, is your identity. Your subconscious beliefs about who you are and what's possible for you form the blueprint for how you move through the world. Your identity sits at the base of the pyramid. That identity shapes your beliefs. Your beliefs generate your emotions. Your emotions influence your thoughts. Your thoughts drive your actions, and your actions create your results, or your lack of results. So if you're trying to change outcomes, your habits, your behaviors, your external reality, without addressing the identity and belief structure underneath, you will stay stuck in cycles of force-based effort. That white knuckling, starting over and over again, feeling like you're failing at something that should be simple. This was exactly what was happening for me. For years, my New Year's resolutions followed a similar script. Refocus on my health, cut out alcohol, especially after the excess of the holidays. And honestly, at first it worked. Dry January was kind of perfect. There was a clear container, a socially acceptable explanation, friends doing it alongside me, and a defined end date. I felt focused, disciplined, and supported. Then February would come. I'd tell myself, I'll just drink on the weekends. That worked for a few weeks. Then it quietly stretched to 3 days a week. Then 4. And eventually I was right back where I started, craving that daily drink. And I made it mean something was wrong with me. Like, why can everyone else do this casually except me? Why can't I just be normal about it? I framed it as a willpower issue, a habit problem, then a personal failing, but it wasn't. And I want to be very clear here, this is not a statement about alcohol being good or bad. Everyone has the right to choose what they consume as long as it's responsible and not causing harm to anyone. This isn't a moral conversation. We're here to talk about the root of change. And for me, it was never really about the drinking. It was about what I was using it to avoid. When I finally slowed down and did some honest soul searching with my own coach, I saw what was underneath the pattern. I was deeply uncomfortable sitting with the reality that I was living out of alignment, professionally, personally. I knew something needed to change, but the cost felt enormous. Because to change at that level, the identity I'd spent years building, it would have to be questioned, unraveled, and reinvented. And that's terrifying. Alcohol became a way to soften that edge, to numb the signal. And this is where emotional intelligence becomes essential. Our emotions are not inconveniences. They're signals. They tell us when something is out of alignment. And it's not a coincidence that I used alcohol to numb those signals. But the same pattern shows up in other ways. It doesn't have to be through alcohol. I see that constantly with clients. Overworking, staying busy to avoid uncertainty, grief, or emptiness, or people-pleasing, prioritizing others' comfort to avoid rejection or disapproval. Different behaviors, same roots. Avoidance is always rooted in fear. There's no exception. Might be the fear of failing, the fear of disappointing, the fear of losing identity, status, or safety. So we don't change the identity. We just manage the behavior until the system resets. Once I saw this, the work changed. It stopped being about controlling or eliminating a behavior, and it became about embodying a whole different identity. That meant intentionally thinking new thoughts about myself, showing up for myself consistently, especially when that fear was loud. Surrounding myself with people living the kinds of lives I aspired to, not as a comparison, but as proof, as evidence that it's possible. As that identity began to stabilize, the behavior changed on its own. Not through force, through coherence. This is why so many New Year's resolutions fail. We try to knock down the last domino, the habit, the action, the visible behavior. But the first domino is always identity. If who you believe yourself to be hasn't shifted, the system will eventually reset to what feels familiar. It will revert back to the same old behavior, even if what feels familiar is misaligned. Familiarity often feels safer than freedom. So here's a simple way to work with this. Gently, honestly, and sustainably. Step 1, name the identity you've been operating from. Not with judgment, just awareness. Because with awareness comes choice. Who have you been being? Step 2, name the identity of the person that you want to become. How does that person think? What do they believe? What are their outcomes? Step 3, choose one daily identity vote. One small, repeatable behavior that someone with that identity would naturally do. And this is where support can matter enormously, because identity change is subtle. And having a mirror or someone who can help you see patterns, challenge blind spots, and reflect your truth back to you can accelerate this process in powerful ways. And if you're really interested in this work, I'll include a link to my meditation that walks you through this identity shift process that you can practice as often as you want. So instead of asking this year, what do I want to fix? What do I want to improve? Ask this instead. Who am I becoming? And what behaviors would be congruent with that version of me? Let that question work on you. And if this conversation resonated, stay tuned for more just like this. My new website is now live, which I'll link below, and you can explore the different ways that we can work together. Starting 2026 with identity level change feels important. You're welcome to book a free clarity call through the site. It's a powerful place to begin. Until next time.